Are there relationships in your life where you feel fully seen?
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. Do you ever feel like you need to be the low-maintenance friend or colleague or family member? The one who has no problems and doesn't need anything from anyone?
I do. I do feel like that sometimes, but I think it also depends on the relationship that I have. We've talked about interpersonal relationships before, and we know that there's different levels of relationships. So the people that I'm closest with, they get all of who I am. But those folks that I'm relatively close to, but don't have a true interpersonal relationship, I always like to think of it as the irreplaceables versus the replaceables in my life. And I do have people that I'm friendly enough with. If they leave tomorrow and they've served their purpose in my life, that's okay with me. And I think with those folks, there are times when I think that it's just not appropriate for me to share certain trials and tribulations that I'm going through with them. I don't think that we've built space in our relationship for me to be that vulnerable.
That makes sense. If I complain about something, they're going to ride it out, where somebody else might not.
I think there's two different ways of looking at it. I think there's letting them know what's going on in your life without requiring them to hold it and carry it, versus them dealing with the version of you that had to deal with a whole bunch of crap all day. I think those are two different things. And I don't have a problem with sharing with the people around me what is going on and letting them know the totality of what happened in my day, including some of the complaints. But I don't think I'm asking them, and now Oscar might disagree, but I don't think I'm asking them.
It's nice not getting their opinions, isn't it? We just get to talk about
it. To stay outside. This is our time to talk. But I think that or at least I try to do a good job of not requiring him to hold the weight of what's going on that might be making me unhappy or sad or frustrated. But I think it's appropriate to tell him what's going on, because I'm not going to always know when subconsciously I have an irritated moment, and he will be able to say, oh, she's probably a little irritated because this and this is going on, versus if I don't share any of that.
We're different now. We do talk about work, but when we first got married, we both had psychologically taxing jobs. And so there was a point where we put a moratorium on talking about work at home. We're not talking about it right now because we both have stuff going on. And so it's just adding to the other person's
plate.
Yeah.
And even with that, you did lay the foundation that work is heavy. So that's why I'm not talking about it, instead of just ignoring it altogether and pretending as if everything is fine. And I guess that's what I was saying. Like, there's a difference between pretending that everything is fine versus being open and honest. Hey, this is going on.
Hello, thinkers.
Welcome to Quote Mining,
the bite-sized podcast where each week we explore where quotes come from by stepping inside
and shining a light around to see what's buried beneath the surface, see how they shape the way we connect, and whether they hold up in real life.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Leslie.
Some quotes shine immediately.
And some require excavation.
We bring the questions.
You bring your curiosity.
Ready?
Let's start mining. Today's quote: love takes off the masks we fear we cannot live without, and know we cannot live within.
This quote is equal parts poetic and confrontational. It comes from James Baldwin's 1963 book of essays, Love Takes Off the Masks That We Fear We Cannot Live Without, and Know We Cannot Live Within. I use the word love here not merely in the personal sense, but as in the state of being or a state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of belonging made happy, but in a tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth.
The core meaning of this quote suggests that true love forces us to let go of our personas and our societal roles, forcing us to acknowledge that the fear of vulnerability prevents us from living authentically and fully genuine. True love gives us space to be courageous and free.
Baldwin wrote about race, sexuality, faith, and Americans' moral contradictions. For him, love was revolutionary. Do you think this quote is more about self-acceptance than it is about romantic love?
Yeah, I do think it's more closely tied to self-acceptance. The idea of being honest about who you are, being honest about the societal masks that you're wearing day to day, and then doing the work to remove those masks when you feel like you're in a safe enough space to do that. I think it requires a level of self-awareness and self-acceptance to be able to engage with your partner in that way.
Absolutely.
And I say partner, but I don't think it has to be a romantic partner that you do this with. I think those really close, irreplaceable people in our lives, those interpersonal relationships, I think all of them allow us typically to show up in that kind of way where we are our authentic selves, unmasked.
I've grown where I'm probably more myself in most situations. I do think about like my early 20s, because if I was to put my family, 2 friend groups, my larger, that would be a nightmare for me. Like, it's not necessarily that I was a different person. Your true self changes.
It does grow and evolve, but I would push back on the idea of it changing depending upon the context within the same time frame.
Like an example I can give is if you were at a bar with friends, you're probably going to talk about and have different conversations than if you were at work. Like the way you contextually change based on that. It's not that you're not living your true self and being true. It's just the context changes, and then the way you operate within that context changes.
I guess that's where the masks come in, right? Because we have different versions of who we are based off of that context. At our core, though, I would say we're still the same person.
Yeah.
But I think people sometimes get slices of us. In Baldwin's case, masks of, this is my social bar face. And these are the things that I'm willing to talk about and not talk about. Because I think even being in those spaces, there are certain things that are still off limits to us. So they're not really getting the whole version of us. They're getting the fun version, or maybe you like to have debates when you have a little bit to drink and you're sitting at the bar. So they get that version of us versus the person at work gets our more responsible part of ourselves, and they get the face that's always smiling and not complaining because we want to keep our income. They're getting different masks, but I think that at our core, we're still being guided by our true self. So I think even within those masks, there's only so much we're willing to do and be, and that part is being guided by our true self.
I can agree with that.
Okay.
But do you think you have to be alone to be your true self? Or do you think you can be in the company of other people? Do you think you're more yourself when you're by yourself? Or do you think people automatically change how you operate?
I think there was a time, especially in early adulthood, where being alone was my true self. And I think that's because I was still getting to know who that true self was. And as we talked about earlier, unmasking is a really vulnerable thing to do. And so I think I didn't necessarily have people in my life, and even my parents to a certain extent, where I was comfortable being fully the woman that I was becoming. And I had to figure out who that woman is or was, because I don't think I really knew. As I solidified who my true self was going to be as an adult human operating in this world, I think then I became more comfortable with unmasking with different people. So I have my core folks and, of course, now my spouse, where I have been able to be authentic with him in ways that's been actually really comfortable. One of the most glaring ways I can think of was unfortunately, when my father passed away. That was a moment for me that I had no idea how I would react. That's not something that we could have talked about. If this happens, how are you going to show up for me? How do you want me? That wasn't a part of our thought process and our communication process. And he died unexpectedly. So there was no way for me to prepare for what my grief was going to look like. And he allowed me to show up, and I felt comfortable enough with him for me to show up in the most rawest form of who I am. And yes, to answer that, I think that I've come to a place now where there are people in my life that I can show up completely authentically for, completely unmasked and raw. But it's taken time for me to get to that point.
When you're truly loved or you truly love, you can't hide behind performance anymore.
So Baldwin is asking us to take a risk and suggests that real love sees the unfiltered you. That's a lot of vulnerability. Maybe the mask states, I'm fine, but love asks, are you really? That question is an acknowledgement that the person knows you enough to know there is more to you, more to your statement. It's calling you out, which speaks to the notion that Baldwin suggests that love forces truth by stripping away illusions.
Where in your life is love inviting you to remove the masks? Are there relationships in your life where you feel fully seen? This has been Quote Mining.
May your today and tomorrows allow for self-acceptance and community to align.